The war-torn sector was silent but for the distant hum of alien engines and the occasional crackle of communication relays. Smoke and debris from 1,000 battles drifted lazily across the void, remnants of skirmishes that had reshaped entire star systems. Amid this wreckage floated a ship unlike any other in the sector, black, battered, scarred from centuries of combat. Its hull was marked by burns from plasma fire, deep gouges from collisions with asteroids, and scars from missiles that had struck it with violent precision. The last human warship. Aliens of every species watched from fleets that had surrounded it for days. They cheered, relieved, triumphant. "Finally," said one Andori admiral over the comms, voice trembling with the mixture of exhaustion and pride. "Finally, humanity is defeated. The last of them is gone. We can celebrate." In every fleet, officers saluted. Crews laughed. A few even cried. For centuries, humans had been the undercurrent of fear in the galaxy, an unpredictable, cunning species that had risen again and again to challenge civilizations far older and larger than themselves. And now, at last, it seemed that they were gone. But the galaxy, for all its knowledge and technology, missed one detail. Beneath the hull, faint and almost imperceptible, a pulse emanated. Dark energy. Subtle, deliberate, alive. Alien sensors blinked in confusion, failing to measure it accurately. It was not an attack. It was not a weapon. It was a heartbeat, a rhythm so old it felt older than any star in the sector. Something slept within the human warship. Something that no one had seen before. Something that had waited for centuries. The last human warship drifted silently, unpowered, motionless to the eye, yet alive in ways the galaxy could not comprehend. Fleets moved around it, formation perfect, weapons calibrated, shields at maximum. The alien admirals studied it, scanning every inch of its hull, every compartment, every system. They expected nothing more than scraps of tech, memories of a species long defeated. They expected nothing alive. And yet, there was life. A subtle vibration under the surface. A faint glow of energy that refused to be measured. Aboard the flagship of the Andori fleet, Admiral Tyros frowned. He had been fighting humans for decades. He had studied their tactics, their history, their wars. He had predicted every move humanity could make. And now, as he looked at the wrecked ship, he felt a chill crawl along his spine. "Sensors are strange," he muttered. "They shouldn't be showing anything, yet something is moving inside it. No, not moving, watching." His officers froze. The words had weight. Not many had heard an admiral speak like that. Usually calm, composed, commanding. But fear, real, raw fear, lingered in his voice. Across the sector, fleets began reporting anomalies. Engines stuttered without warning. Weapons misfired, energy fluctuating erratically. Communications garbled into static, then cleared as if nothing had happened. Pilots swore they saw flickers of light, impossible shadows shifting across the hull of the human ship. It was as though the vessel itself was alive, aware, responding. Panic began to ripple through the ranks. What had been a simple victory was now uncertain. The celebration among the aliens faltered. Whispers began. Officers questioned their readings, their instruments. "Did anyone else see it?" asked a young pilot aboard the Lauren cruiser. "The hull, it moved, or glowed, or something. I don't know. Sensors are all wrong." More reports followed. Shadows appeared inside the hull where no crew could be. Energy signatures flickered in impossible ways. The warship's pulse was slow, deep, and almost imperceptible, yet felt like it carried the weight of centuries. In the council chambers, ambassadors of multiple species debated furiously. "Destroy it immediately," one shouted. "It's only a wreck. Take it apart before it awakens." Another argued, "Wait. There is something unusual. Our readings are inconsistent. The ship's power source is ancient, older than any known technology. We must investigate carefully." Every voice carried fear. Every argument was laced with uncertainty. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, realized that humans might have left behind more than just a single ship. They might have left a legacy. And then, something moved. Not on the surface, not in the engines. Deep inside the hull, where alien sensors failed completely, a mechanism stirred. The dark energy pulsed stronger, bending light subtly, stretching shadows along the scarred metal. Energy fields shifted, defying laws of physics. Ships in the immediate vicinity reported gravimetric anomalies, slight but undeniable. Pilots gripped their controls, hearts racing. They had destroyed thousands of human ships. They had fought the humans for centuries. And yet, this single vessel, broken, drifting, assumed dead, exhibited a presence that the galaxy could not ignore. The crew aboard the human warship, or what remained of it, were long gone, vanished during the last great battle. The ship should have been a hollow relic. And yet, it was far from empty. The systems were alive, as if guided by a mind older than any onboard AI, older than the last human fleet. Every sensor that worked felt it, every instrument failed to measure it. The pulse grew subtly, a deep, resonant hum beneath reality itself, almost imperceptible, yet heavy with warning. Admiral Tyros could not hide the dread creeping along his spine. They've done something we cannot measure, he whispered to himself. Whatever remains inside that ship, it is not ours to understand. Officers around him shifted nervously. They had fought against countless threats, warships of every size and power. But this was different. It was not a warship. It was a seed. A dormant force, waiting to bloom. Alien fleets tightened formation around the wreck. Energy shields lit the void, weapons ready. Engineers and scientists on multiple ships tried to measure the anomaly, tried to anticipate any sign of activity. And yet, every attempt failed. Sensors scrambled. Gravitational anomalies shifted. Time itself seemed to falter briefly near the hull. Fleets that had once dominated entire star systems were now unable to understand a single drifting vessel. The last human warship, though destroyed by battle, had become an enigma, a puzzle the galaxy could not solve. A subtle vibration began across the sector. Not an explosion. Not an engine roar. Just a rhythm, steady and deep, like a heartbeat echoing through space. It pulsed in harmony with the scars of the human warship, as if the ship itself were breathing. Pilots and admirals alike felt a weight in their minds. Fear, awe, curiosity, confusion, hope, dread. All emotions collided in a single, unmeasurable wave. This was not a ship that could be boarded. It was not a weapon that could be fired upon. It was a presence. Something ancient. Something forgotten. The alien fleets panicked. Some wanted to flee. Some wanted to strike. Every plan seemed wrong. Every strategy, every fleet formation, every calculation, every prediction, all meaningless. The dark energy pulsed again, stronger this time, radiating out in subtle waves that interfered with engines and weapons. Shadows stretched impossibly across the void, following no known physics. The last human warship was no longer merely a vessel. It had become the key to something far older, far deadlier than the galaxy had ever encountered. Even the historians and scholars sent to study the wreck were baffled. Their ancient texts spoke of relics of the humans, their lost technologies, and their clever tricks, but nothing predicted this. Nothing in their records described a vessel so old, so scarred, and yet still alive with power and purpose. And as the fleets hesitated, the humans' last warship pulsed once more, faintly, deliberately, and a cold realization spread through the galaxy. This was only the beginning. The eyes of the galaxy had celebrated. They had cheered. They had thought humanity finally gone. And yet, deep within the hull, hidden from all comprehension, something ancient stirred. Something awake. Something older than the stars. And as it pulsed, the dark energy radiating into space, the galaxy, full of pride, full of power, full of arrogance, did not notice the eyes watching, waiting. And so, the last human warship, though broken, though battered, carried within it secrets older than any civilization. A pulse that could bend light and space subtly, a rhythm older than the first colonies, and a presence that hinted at a force far beyond understanding. The galaxy had celebrated, and yet, it had not begun to understand. For what slept within that blackened, scarred vessel would change everything. Time stretched in the void. Fleets hovered. Pilots trembled. Weapons lay idle. Engineers scratched their heads in disbelief. And somewhere deep inside the human warship, something ancient began to stir. Its pulse grew stronger, deepening, resonating across the sector, whispering a promise that the galaxy would never forget, Humanity had returned, and even in defeat, its legacy would awaken something the universe had never seen. The galaxy had barely begun to celebrate the apparent fall of humanity's last warship when the unexpected happened. Alien engineers, scientists, and explorers descended on the black, scarred vessel, eager to harvest technology, salvage weapons, and claim victory. They had assumed the ship was empty, lifeless, nothing more than a relic of centuries of human cunning and war. They had assumed that their victory was complete. They were wrong. As the alien teams attached scanning probes and entered the ship's shattered corridors, faint energy readings began to flicker on their instruments. Not weapons energy. Not shields. Not life signs. Something else. Something ancient. At first, the readings were dismissed as sensor glitches, interference caused by the damaged hull. But then, subtle vibrations emanated from the core of the ship, rhythmic, deliberate, almost like a pulse. The energy was dark, alien, and alive, bending light around itself and twisting the readings in ways no scientist could explain. Captain Virek of the Lauren fleet examined the readings and froze. His tentacles shook slightly as he adjusted the instruments. This is not possible," he whispered, voice trembling. "There is something inside. Something ancient. I cannot define it, cannot predict it, cannot measure it accurately. It reacts to our presence." His engineers exchanged nervous glances. No one spoke. Fear hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Across the sector, other fleets began to report anomalies. Sensors failed. Navigational arrays blinked erratically. Energy readings surged and dropped without explanation. Communication grids hummed with static and interference. Pilots reported seeing ghostly flickers inside the ship's corridors, shadows that moved where no crew could be, lights that glimmered without source. It was as if the vessel itself were alive, aware of the aliens examining it. Council chambers convened emergency sessions. Ambassadors debated urgently, their voices tense, shaking, strained with fear. "Destroy it immediately," one yelled, pointing at the holomap showing the last human warship. "We cannot risk what it carries. If there is a hidden system, a trap, or a weapon, we will all be annihilated." Another responded, trembling but firm, "We do not understand it. The readings cannot be explained by our technology or knowledge. There is something older than any civilization alive. We must investigate carefully, or we risk triggering something we cannot control." Every plan was argued, every strategy debated. Fleets prepared, cautious yet ready. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, trying to isolate the source of the energy, to decode it, to understand it. And yet, every attempt failed. Every measurement contradicted the last. The pulse deep inside the ship was not constant. It fluctuated subtly, as though alive, responding to observation, aware of attempts to study it, aware of every movement across the sector. Captain Virek walked along the observation deck of his flagship, eyes fixed on the human warship. "It is watching us," he said softly. "Not with eyes, with presence. It knows we are here. It knows what we are trying to do. And I feel judged." Engineers and pilots felt the same unease. The pulse was faint, almost imperceptible, but heavy. It pressed on their minds, subtle yet undeniable. Fear was not the only emotion. They felt awe, respect, confusion, and dread simultaneously. They were confronting something far beyond their comprehension. And then it spoke, not with words, not with sound, but with a ripple of dark energy that stretched across the sector. Communications faltered. Ships wobbled in their trajectories. Energy grids surged and dropped in seconds. Pilots reported seeing the ship flicker across multiple sectors at once, impossible yet undeniable. The last human warship was no longer just a relic. It had become a trigger. And the galaxy had just begun to realize it. Ambassador Lyra, observing from the council chambers, spoke to the assembly. Her voice was calm but tense, cutting through the panic. "Do you understand what is happening?" she asked. "This is no ordinary ship. Its energy is older than our records, older than our civilizations. It is alive, in ways we cannot comprehend. And the humans, they have left it deliberately. They have hidden something inside. We are not merely observing a warship. We are observing a key to something far older, far more dangerous than any of us imagined. The council murmured in disbelief. Many had dismissed humans as clever, resilient, and unpredictable, but never beyond imagination. This ship, broken and battered, was teaching the galaxy humility in ways no war or weapon ever could. And as the pulse deepened, as sensors continued to fail, as fleets faltered under an invisible influence, one truth became chillingly clear: the galaxy had triggered something. Something that should have remained dormant. Captain Virek ordered his fleet to halt all physical interaction with the human warship. No probes. No boarding teams. Leave it alone, he commanded, his voice firm but quivering. Engineers, reluctantly obeying, watched as the ship's dark energy pulsed again, bending light and space subtly but unmistakably. The shadows along the hull lengthened and twisted, giving the illusion that the ship itself was breathing, stretching, alive. No one dared approach closer. Even the bravest pilots hesitated to fly near, fearing consequences they could not anticipate. Across the sector, the anomaly grew stronger. Energy pulses radiated farther, touching neighboring fleets. Engines flickered. Weapons misfired. Communications faltered. Alien leaders realized the terrifying truth: this was not a human warship anymore. It was a vessel carrying the weight of ancient power. And that power, long forgotten, had begun to awaken. Historians and scientists pored over ancient texts, desperate for answers. They found faint references to the ancients, a civilization that had predated all known life in the galaxy. The records described massive superwarships, vessels capable of bending space and time, powered by dark energy that defied comprehension. The last human warship, it seemed, was more than just a ship, it was a bridge. A key. A dormant trigger. Humanity had uncovered a secret older than any civilization alive, hidden it carefully, and now, unknowingly or not, activated it. Alien fleets shivered. Pilots whispered to one another in hushed voices, "We cannot touch it. We cannot measure it. We cannot understand it." Engineers reported fluctuations in dark matter energy, gravitational anomalies that contradicted physics, and readings that twisted reality itself. The pulse grew, stronger, resonating through the sector, and a heavy, unspoken realization fell upon every being present. The humans' final warship had awoken something older, something powerful, something dangerous. And the galaxy understood, finally, that its victory was incomplete. That its celebration had been premature. That the humans, long thought defeated, had left behind a legacy, a secret, a presence older than the stars themselves. Something slept inside the hull of the last human warship. Something alive. Something waiting. Time seemed to slow across the sector. Fleets drifted, hesitant. Pilots froze mid-flight. Engineers' hands shook as instruments blinked erratically. The pulse deepened once more, subtle, deliberate, inexorable. Shadows shifted across the hull in ways impossible to predict. And in that silence, the galaxy felt a single, chilling truth: the humans had prepared for this moment. They had left behind more than a warship. They had left a key. They had left a warning. And the galaxy had ignored it. The energy pulse flickered once more, deep and resonant, almost like a heartbeat. It reached beyond the human warship, touching ships, stations, and planets. The galaxy felt the presence of something older than itself, a force that humanity had uncovered, a power that was now stirring after centuries of sleep. And as the fleets hesitated, as leaders debated and scientists scrambled, the last human warship, broken, battered, but alive in ways no one could understand, had become more than a relic. It had become a signal that something ancient had begun to awaken. And somewhere, deep inside the blackened, scarred hull, a mechanism stirred. Dark energy pulsed stronger, almost sentient, almost deliberate. The galaxy did not yet know what it was. They did not yet understand its purpose. But the first warning had arrived. Something old. Something powerful. Something beyond comprehension. The humans had left a signal. And now, the universe was listening. The last human warship floated silently in the void, its black hull scarred, battered, and broken, yet alive in ways no one in the galaxy could comprehend. The pulse of dark energy that had begun in the previous days grew stronger, resonating like a heartbeat through the metal bones of the vessel. Across the sector, alien fleets watched in disbelief as instruments failed, sensors scrambled, and energy readings twisted in ways that defied physics. This was no longer a simple relic. This was a force ancient and alive, and it had begun to awaken. Deep inside the hull, far beyond the reach of alien probes, something stirred. It was vast, immense, and older than the stars. It had slept for millennia, hidden beneath layers of human engineering, waiting for the perfect moment to rise. The dark energy that pulsed from the ship was not just power, it was awareness. Not just life, it was a memory older than most civilizations alive. It had been dormant, silent, forgotten. And now, it had begun to remember. Pilots and fleet commanders across the sector reported impossible phenomena. The last human warship seemed to flicker, appearing in multiple positions at once. Its shadow stretched across space in unnatural ways, bending light, bending reality itself. Ships nearby faltered. Engines stuttered. Weapons failed to engage. Some fleets tried to flee, only to find their coordinates shifting inexplicably, their paths redirected by an invisible hand. Even the bravest commanders whispered in terror, "It's moving? No, not moving. It is everywhere." In the council chambers, diplomats were at a loss. They had anticipated the destruction of humanity's last warship, the end of a centuries-long threat. And now, they were confronted by something no words could describe. Ambassador Lyra's voice trembled as she addressed the assembly. This is no longer a ship. This is something older. Something humans have found and hidden. Something the galaxy has ignored for far too long. It stirs. And when it fully awakens, we will not survive it. Meanwhile, across the sectors, engineers tried desperately to make sense of the anomalies. Dark matter readings surged and fell unpredictably. Energy signatures flickered like distant stars caught in storms. Gravity itself twisted subtly around the warship. Instruments that had charted galaxies accurately for decades now failed to produce consistent results. Pilots reported seeing impossible corridors bending back on themselves, stretching into infinity. Time seemed to stutter near the vessel. Captain Virek of the Lauren fleet watched from his observation deck, heart pounding. "It's alive," he whispered to himself, voice barely audible. "Not alive as we understand it, but aware. It feels us. It responds to us. And it is ancient, older than any of our histories, older than our records." His crew remained silent, frozen by a mix of awe and terror. The pulse deep within the human warship had grown deliberate, rhythmic, and terrifyingly intelligent. It was no longer a relic. It was a key to a past the galaxy had forgotten. The first signs of awakening were subtle yet undeniable. Sensors detected a wave of energy expanding from the hull. It was not destructive, at least, not yet, but it affected everything in its path. Fleet formations wavered. Shields fluctuated. Engines misfired. Even the space around nearby planets seemed to shimmer and warp slightly, bending light and perception in ways that unsettled even the most experienced observers. This was the work of something beyond human understanding, beyond alien comprehension, a force that predated every civilization in the sector. In the midst of the panic, the last human warship itself seemed to change. Its dark, scarred hull pulsed with renewed energy. Lights flickered inside the decks as if a presence moved along corridors long thought empty. Alien scientists scanning the vessel reported readings of immense power emanating from its core, power they could not explain, could not measure, and could not resist. Something ancient had begun to rise, and the galaxy felt the weight of its awakening. Historians scrambling to understand referred to old records of the ancients, civilizations that existed long before current galactic powers. These records spoke of superwarships, vessels capable of bending space and time, powered by dark energy that could reshape entire sectors. No one had thought such things still existed. And yet, here it was. Hidden within the last human warship, guided by humanity, waiting silently, it now stirred. The pulse grew stronger, resonating across the void, awakening memories encoded in technology older than the galaxy itself. Fleet commanders attempted one last intervention. Weapons were targeted at the vessel. Boarding teams prepared to enter. Engines charged for evasive maneuvers. And yet, as the humans' last warship pulsed, every attempt failed. Lasers missed their mark. Missiles faltered mid-flight. Boarding drones went offline as energy fields warped around them. The vessel itself seemed aware of every action, responding in ways subtle yet unmistakable. It was alive. It was calculating. And it was patient. Alien fleets began to withdraw, reluctantly, as fear spread faster than orders. Pilots whispered of seeing fleeting glimpses of impossible geometry within the hull, corridors folding into themselves, lights stretching where no walls existed. They felt the ship watching them, judging them, assessing their strength, their courage, their fear. The humans' last warship, though crippled, had become something far beyond technology. It had become a vessel of judgment. Across the galaxy, colonies and stations felt subtle vibrations in space. Gravity anomalies, energy surges, communications disruptions, effects that could not be explained by science or logic. Ships stationed near the warship reported feeling heavy, oppressive presence, as if an unseen hand pressed down upon them. Even the bravest pilots, trained to face supernovas and black holes, shivered with dread. They were witnessing something primordial, something older than any star, and it was waking. The Council realized, finally, the truth they had tried to ignore. Humanity had not merely left behind a ship. They had left behind a key. A vessel connected to something far older than any civilization alive. Something powerful, intelligent, and capable of awakening across centuries. And now, the last human warship had done it. It had activated the ancient force, slowly, deliberately, and with a purpose the galaxy could not yet grasp. In the silence of space, the pulse deepened. Alien fleets floated helplessly. Pilots gripped controls in terror. Engineers frantically tried to understand, to quantify, to calculate, yet every measurement failed. The last human warship was no longer just a ship, it was a beacon, a trigger, and a warning. Something ancient was stirring, and the galaxy had barely noticed. Captain Virek stared at the warship, pale and trembling. We thought we had won. We thought humanity was gone. But this is something else. Something far older. Something we cannot fight. Something we cannot reason with. And it is awake. And deep within the black, scarred hull, the ancient systems pulsed stronger. Dark energy radiated, bending light, twisting space, warping reality. The last human warship, though broken and battered, had awakened the past. Something vast, ancient, and unstoppable had begun to stir. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, and already the first tremors of fear spread across fleets, colonies, and council chambers alike. Humanity had returned, and the past had awakened with it. The awakening of the last human warship had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. No fleet, no technology, no council procedure could contain the dread that now spread through every sector. Across light years, sensors failed, communications faltered, and alien leaders stared at their instruments in disbelief. Every measurement contradicted the last. Every calculation proved useless. The pulse of dark energy emanating from the black, scarred vessel was no longer subtle. It stretched across sectors, bending light, warping space, and twisting reality in ways no one had ever witnessed. In the Grand Council chambers, hundreds of delegates from the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy gathered urgently. Holoscreens displayed the drifting human warship, scarred yet pulsating with energy older than time itself. Ambassadors shouted over one another, voices trembling with a mixture of fear, frustration, and disbelief. "We cannot ignore this," one shrieked. "This is no ordinary warship. It is alive, in ways we cannot measure. Destroy it now before it spreads further." Another voice, calm but rigid, countered, "You do not understand. If we strike without knowledge, we risk triggering whatever lies within it. We are dealing with forces older than our technology, older than our histories. Patience is the only option, though it pains me to say it." Even as the words were spoken, the chamber trembled subtly, a ripple passing through the floor that no one could explain. Admiral Tyros, one of the most experienced military leaders in the galaxy, stood in his command room aboard the Council's flagship. His normally calm and commanding voice was tight with fear. "We have fought humans for centuries. We have studied their strategies, their fleets, their cunning. And yet, this," he gestured helplessly at the holomap displaying the warship. "This is beyond any human technology. Sensors cannot measure it. Weapons cannot touch it. Engines fail to respond near it. It is alive. And it is aware of us." Throughout the galaxy, fleets hovered in a state of tense paralysis. Pilots gripped their controls, feeling the pulse of dark energy in their bones. Engineers scrambled to stabilize failing systems. Scientists reported readings of gravitational distortion, energy surges, and spatial anomalies that contradicted every law of physics. The Council had hoped to study, to investigate, to control. Now they realized they were powerless. The debates inside the Council chambers grew frantic. Some species argued for immediate destruction. Fire everything. Do not hesitate. If we fail, the galaxy dies. Others argued for retreat and observation. We must understand what it is. We have no idea of the consequences. We risk annihilation if we strike blindly. Every argument, every strategy, every prediction was fractured by fear. None of them had faced anything like this before. Ambassador Lyra, standing on the council podium, raised her voice above the chaos. "Listen to me," she commanded. "We cannot fight what we do not understand. We cannot reason with what predates our histories. This is not merely a warship, it is a remnant of an ancient power, something humanity discovered, something humanity protected. And now, the last human warship has awakened it. We are not just facing a weapon. We are facing a force older than any of us, alive in ways we cannot comprehend." Her words silenced the chamber, but only for a moment. Panic returned almost immediately. Delegates argued, shouts rose, some even wept openly. The weight of their fear pressed down upon them as the pulse of the human warship grew stronger, reaching subtly into the council chambers themselves. The lights flickered. Systems blinked. Even the very air felt heavy, as if the presence of the warship extended across the void and reached into every mind in the galaxy. Admiral Tyros gripped the railing of the command deck, jaw tight. "We are fools," he muttered. "We celebrated victory. We thought humanity was gone. And now, we are confronted with something we cannot fight, cannot escape, cannot understand. If this warship completes its awakening, none of our fleets, none of our civilizations, will survive." His officers nodded silently. Some tried to reassure themselves, but the trembling hands and the fear in their eyes betrayed them. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, communications from distant fleets grew frantic. Pilots described impossible sightings, the human warship flickering across multiple coordinates simultaneously, shadows stretching unnaturally along its hull, corridors appearing where none should exist, and lights bending in impossible ways. Every attempt to fire weapons or approach the vessel failed. Missiles misfired. Lasers bent away. Engines stuttered. Even the bravest warriors froze in awe and terror, realizing that the ship was no longer merely a vessel, it had become a sentient presence, an intelligence guiding its own defense. Scientists aboard the Council's research stations began piecing together fragments of old records. They discovered faint accounts of the ancients, a civilization predating all known life, creators of superweapons capable of warping space, bending time, and reshaping entire star systems. The last human warship, it seemed, had discovered a fragment of that ancient power and had kept it hidden for centuries. And now, with the warship's awakening, the galaxy was confronted with a force they could not comprehend or contain. In the council chambers, Ambassador Lyra's voice grew somber. "We are witnessing the consequences of human foresight," she said quietly. "They prepared for a time we did not anticipate. They left behind a vessel carrying power we cannot measure. And now, it stirs. It awakens. We are not facing a warship. We are facing the past itself, alive once more, guided by the humans who dared to survive." Panic spread like wildfire. Fleets scrambled to adjust positions, only to find engines stalling. Communications dropped. Navigation systems faltered. The pulse of the last human warship had reached far across the sector, touching every mind, every instrument, every fleet. The galaxy's leaders realized with horror that they were no longer in control. They had celebrated humanity's fall too soon. Humanity's last warship had awakened something that the galaxy could neither predict nor resist. Time seemed to stretch unnaturally as the Council convened emergency summits again and again, debating futile strategies. Scientists reported gravitational distortions bending stars' light. Pilots swore they saw glimpses of impossible corridors, spaces folding upon themselves. Ships and fleets that had once dominated entire star systems faltered helplessly. Fear gripped the galaxy in its entirety. And deep within the blackened hull of the last human warship, the pulse grew deliberate. Dark energy shimmered along the scarred metal, bending reality subtly, shaping the void around it. What had been dormant for centuries now actively stirred. Ancient systems long hidden beneath layers of human engineering had activated, responding to the galaxy's presence. The warship was no longer just a relic of the past, it had become a sentinel, a key, a force aware of its surroundings, measuring the power and weakness of those who dared approach. Admiral Tyro's voice was low, almost a whisper, as he looked out at the flickering holomap of the sector. We thought we had ended humanity. We thought the galaxy was safe. We thought this was a victory. And now, it is waking. And I fear, we are not ready for what comes next. Around him, his officers said nothing. Their silence was heavy with dread, for every heartbeat, every pulse, every flicker of energy from the human warship reminded them of a single unthinkable truth: the galaxy had celebrated too soon. Humanity's last warship had begun the awakening of something ancient, something unstoppable, something that would change everything. The galaxy had entered a state of quiet panic. Fleets that had once dominated entire sectors now hovered like children in the shadow of a force they could not understand. The last human warship, blackened and scarred from centuries of battle, pulsed with dark energy, bending light and space around it. And now, it moved, not in the way a normal vessel moved, with engines and thrusters, but as if it existed in multiple places at once, as though the very void itself carried it forward. For the first time, a fleet attempted direct contact. Not to attack, but to study, to communicate, to understand. The Loran flagship, bristling with scanners and armed to the teeth, approached the warship carefully. Pilots held their breath. Scientists monitored every fluctuation in energy, every flicker of dark matter along the hull. And then it happened. A ripple spread across the warship's surface, subtle at first, almost like a breath. Sensors went wild. Energy readings spiked and crashed, bending the instruments beyond recognition. Shields fluctuated. Engines shuddered. Communications garbled, voices twisting into static and whispers. And yet, no weapon fired. No attack came. The warship simply existed, and its presence was enough to make the galaxy tremble. Captain Varek of the Loran fleet watched in disbelief. "It's observing us," he muttered. "Not like a machine. Not like a ship. But, aware. Judging. Measuring. Responding." Engineers tried to make sense of the readings, but every instrument, every algorithm, every calculation failed. The warship was alive in ways they could not define. It pulsed again, this time stronger, and pilots reported seeing corridors bending, hulls flickering, impossible shapes appearing where none should exist. The last human warship was more than a ship, it was a presence. Across the galaxy, other fleets scrambled to approach. Some were sent to intercept, others to flee. And all of them reported the same phenomena. Ships appeared in multiple positions at once. Energy pulses bent trajectories. Missiles fizzled mid-flight. Lasers bent harmlessly around the hull. Pilots spoke in hushed voices over comms. It knows we are here. It moves before we move. It is everywhere." Fear, awe, confusion, and respect swept through the galaxy at once. The council convened again, urgently. Ambassadors shouted over each other, panic spilling into their words. "We must destroy it. It cannot be allowed to move freely," one yelled. Another responded, "We cannot. It is beyond our weapons, beyond our understanding. Every attempt to strike has failed. We are powerless." And in that chamber, a silence fell, heavy and oppressive, as the implications sank in. The humans, long thought gone, had left something behind. And it was awake. Fleet commanders began to notice patterns. The warship did not attack indiscriminately. It did not fire on ships or stations. It did not destroy out of malice. Yet its presence alone was overwhelming, paralyzing. Engines stalled, communications failed, sensors went blind. Ships drifted helplessly, as though the very space around the vessel resisted their attempts to act. It was not destruction, it was control. And the galaxy had never faced anything like it. Historians and scientists began connecting fragments of ancient texts. Mentions of the ancients, civilizations that predated all known life, appeared again and again. These civilizations had built superwarships capable of bending space, warping time, and reshaping entire sectors. The last human warship, it seemed, had discovered remnants of this power, hidden them carefully, and now activated them. What the fleets were witnessing was not technology in the conventional sense, it was a force older than the galaxy itself, guided by humanity's hand. Pilots on the front lines reported seeing shapes moving along the hull. Not crew members, there were none. Not machines, but corridors bending, floors folding, shadows stretching in impossible geometries. The ship seemed to breathe, to stretch, to warp reality itself. Engines fluctuated. Weapons failed. Navigation systems faltered. And yet, it did not attack. It observed. It judged. It waited. Captain Varek, gripping the railing of his observation deck, spoke softly to himself. It is testing us. Measuring us. Seeing how we respond. Humanity, they have left behind more than a warship. They have left a sentinel. Something alive. Something aware. Something that understands us better than we understand ourselves. Around him, officers nodded silently, fear and awe etched on every face. The galaxy had assumed the last human warship was a relic. It was not. It was the first step in humanity's return, a step that none of the civilizations alive could predict or resist. As the fleets watched, the warship pulsed again, and a ripple of dark energy stretched out, touching neighboring sectors. Communications dropped. Sensors went dark. Pilots reported seeing the warship in multiple places simultaneously, impossible yet undeniable. The first contact with the unknown had been made, and it had changed everything. The galaxy was no longer in control. It had not even begun to understand. Ambassadors in the council murmured, voices trembling. "We have triggered something," one whispered. "Something humans left behind, something we cannot fight. Something that is awake." Another replied, "And it is just the beginning. Whatever lies within that vessel, we have not yet seen its full power. We are fools to have celebrated our victory too soon." The dark energy pulsing through the last human warship deepened. Shadows along the hull twisted. Light bent. Space itself seemed to stretch and compress unpredictably. Fleets hovered, helpless. Pilots whispered prayers, engineers stared at impossible readings, and leaders trembled as the truth settled. Humanity had returned, not with fleets of war, but with a force older, smarter, and far deadlier than any living civilization. And in the silence of the void, the warship continued to pulse, subtle yet deliberate. It was aware. It was alive. It was judging. And the galaxy knew, with a chilling clarity, that first contact with the unknown had begun. The universe had witnessed the rise of something beyond comprehension. Humanity had returned, and the last warship had awakened a force that no one could resist, no one could predict, and no one could control. The first contact had been made, and the galaxy trembled in response. The last human warship pulsed with a rhythm that reverberated across the sector, a heartbeat older than any living star, a force that had waited silently for centuries. Alien fleets hovered in awe and terror, their instruments unable to measure, their weapons unable to fire, their minds unable to comprehend. The humans' last vessel was no longer just a ship, it had become a conduit, a vessel of the ancients, a power the galaxy had thought lost forever. Captain Virek's eyes widened as he observed the ship from his flagship's observation deck. "It's not just moving," he whispered. "It is shaping reality around it. Engines falter. Weapons misfire. Even sensors cannot read it properly. This is power older than anything we've ever seen." His crew watched silently, hearts racing, minds struggling to comprehend the impossibility. Some began whispering among themselves, voices shaking, "It's alive. It's thinking. It's testing us." And they were right. The warship's pulse intensified, dark energy spreading like invisible fingers through space, subtly distorting star systems, bending the light of distant suns, stretching the fabric of space itself. Fleets that had dominated entire sectors faltered helplessly. Pilots reported ghostly reflections of themselves inside their cockpits, shadows that mimicked every move, every thought, every hesitation. The human's warship was aware, and it was measuring the galaxy with terrifying precision. In the council chambers, ambassadors panicked. "We must attack," shouted one, slamming their clawed hands on the table. "We cannot allow this power to grow unchecked." Another voice, trembling yet resolute, argued, "You cannot fight it. It is beyond our comprehension. It bends space, warps energy, and controls forces we cannot even name. Attacking will only awaken it further." The room erupted in chaos. Histories, strategies, and fleets that had once brought entire civilizations to heel now felt like fragile toys in the hands of an unseen force. Deep within the last human warship, mechanisms long dormant began to hum. Energy conduits glowed faintly, shadows shifted across the hull in impossible geometries, and a deep, resonant pulse spread outward, subtly twisting reality around the vessel. It was alive, aware, and deliberate. Every instrument aboard alien fleets scrambled to comprehend the readings but failed. Gravity fluctuated. Energy fields bent. Light twisted. Ships shuddered. Even the Council's most advanced stations could not resist the pull of its power. Captain Virek gripped the railing, sweat dripping down his forehead. "We are not facing humans anymore," he murmured. "We are facing the legacy of the ancients themselves, channeled through their warship. Every fleet we send, every weapon we fire, it knows. It reacts. It controls." Engineers tried to reassure themselves, scribbling notes and recalibrating instruments, but the flickering lights and shifting shadows told the truth. The humans' last warship was no ordinary vessel. It was a sentinel, a guardian, a force older than life, awakened by humanity's cunning and patience. As the dark pulse spread, the warship subtly altered its environment. Time seemed to stutter near it. Fleets reported moments where seconds stretched into minutes, while light warped along impossible paths. Energy readings spiked in ways that defied every law of physics. Pilots described corridors inside the ship appearing to fold upon themselves, bending infinitely, as if the vessel were larger inside than outside. And through all of it, the pulse continued, steady and deliberate, like a heartbeat that had measured centuries and waited patiently for this moment. Historians pored over ancient texts, desperate for understanding. They found references to the ancients, civilizations whose ships had once shaped galaxies. The records described vessels powered by dark matter energy, capable of bending space, influencing perception, and shaping reality itself. The last human warship, they realized with growing horror, had awakened one of these forces. Humanity had discovered the ancient secrets, hidden them, and now, intentionally or not, reactivated them. The galaxy was unprepared. The galaxy was vulnerable. Fleet commanders tried to respond. Lasers were fired. Missiles launched. Boarding teams prepared. Yet every attempt failed. Weapons curved impossibly away. Engines stalled mid-flight. Communication grids warped into static. Even the bravest warriors whispered in fear, realizing they were no longer confronting a warship, but an intelligence older than any living species, guided by the human's foresight. Captain Virek's voice shook as he addressed his crew. "We thought victory was ours," he said quietly. "We thought humanity was gone. But we were wrong. This is the power of the ancients. And it flows through the last human warship. We are witnessing a force the galaxy cannot fight. We are witnessing history awaken. And I fear we may not survive it." Around him, his officers could only nod, silence heavy with dread and awe. Across the sector, fleets that had once dominated star systems drifted helplessly. Pilots whispered prayers. Engineers shook. Scientists frantically recalibrated sensors that refused to read the warship. Shadows stretched along the hull in impossible ways. Dark energy pulsed outward, bending space, affecting the very minds of those who approached. The galaxy's leaders realized a truth they could not deny. Humanity's last warship was not merely a relic of the past. It was the first step in reclaiming power older than the stars, and the galaxy had no defense against it. And deep within the hull, systems long dormant hummed with life. Energy conduits glowed brighter. Dark matter thrummed in harmony with the pulse. The warship stretched, subtly, bending light and space as if waking from a sleep that had lasted millennia. The humans had left behind more than a ship. They had left behind a force, a guardian, a power, a legacy of the ancients. And it had begun to stir. The Council panicked further, issuing contradictory orders, launching fleets, recalling fleets, debating strategies that already failed. Across every system, the pulse of the last human warship grew, bending reality subtly yet undeniably. Pilots, engineers, scientists, diplomats, All felt the weight of the awakening. The humans were gone, but the power they had left behind was alive, aware, unstoppable. The galaxy trembled under the presence of the last human warship, and no one dared act without fear, for every move could trigger consequences beyond imagination. Time seemed to stretch unnaturally. Fleets hovered, uncertain, as the pulse deepened. The warship pulsed again, deliberate, rhythmic, and far-reaching. Space warped subtly, ships drifted helplessly, instruments failed repeatedly. The power of the ancients, awakened through humanity's final warship, was no longer a secret. It was a force alive, measuring, judging, and ready to reclaim what it had once held long ago. Captain Virek whispered to himself, voice heavy with dread, "We have underestimated humanity. We have celebrated too soon. And now, the power of the ancients flows again. And the galaxy may not survive it." The galaxy held its breath. For centuries, civilizations had never seen a force like this. The last human warship, scarred and blackened from battles long past, pulsed with dark energy older than the stars themselves. It had begun to awaken, and what had been a subtle pulse had now grown deliberate, strong, impossible to ignore. Fleets that had celebrated humanity's defeat now drifted helplessly, their engines faltering, their weapons misfiring, their minds weighed down by fear they could not shake. The first strike came without warning. It was not a missile, not a weapon fired, not a conventional attack. It was the pulse itself. Dark energy rippled outward, bending light, twisting space, and subtly warping reality. Alien ships faltered. Engines stuttered. Pilots described sensations of heaviness, as if unseen hands pressed upon their ships. Missiles fizzled mid-flight. Lasers bent harmlessly away. Entire fleets that had been confident now found themselves powerless, drifting like leaves in a storm they could not see. Captain Virek gripped the railing of his observation deck, heart pounding, mind racing. "It's striking without firing," he whispered. "It doesn't need weapons. It is alive. It is judging. And we are its prey." Engineers scrambled to stabilize failing systems, but every calculation contradicted the last. Communications dropped repeatedly. Sensors went blind. Ships drifted into strange patterns, some even colliding with debris fields they hadn't detected. The dark energy wasn't just power, it was awareness, intelligence, and judgment all at once. Across the galaxy, the council erupted in panic. Ambassadors shouted over one another, voices cracking with fear. "We must destroy it," one screamed. "We cannot let it move unchecked." Another countered, voice trembling, "We cannot. Every strike fails. Every weapon misfires. We are facing something older than all our histories, something that cannot be fought conventionally. If we attack, we may trigger worse consequences." Even the most experienced commanders felt despair creeping into their hearts. Pilots whispered prayers as they flew toward the last human warship, only to see their instruments collapse, weapons shut down, engines stall. Shadows stretched along the vessel in impossible geometries, corridors bending in ways that defied logic, lights flickering and folding as though the ship itself breathed. The first strike of darkness had arrived, and it was not limited to physical destruction. It was a test, a display of control, and a demonstration of power the galaxy had never known. Dr. Vargas walked among her crew, placing hands on shoulders, offering words of comfort, words that reminded them of the human spirit's resilience. "We have survived the impossible," she said, voice calm but filled with gravity. "We have turned fear into strength, despair into courage, and weakness into triumph. But remember this, every sacrifice we make carries the weight of our survival. Every life lost drives us forward. Humanity endures because we fight, because we love, because we never give up." The crew listened, hearts swelling with pride and sorrow. They had seen the worst of war and the best of human spirit. Every engineer, every pilot, every soldier had played a part in a victory that would be remembered for generations. The humans had turned scraps into the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. They had outsmarted the alien council, exploited arrogance, and proved that heart could triumph over might. Amid the celebrations, quiet personal stories stood out. Hannah, her ship barely operational, guided survivors to safety, her hands steady despite exhaustion. Eli checked on his squadron, ensuring every pilot made it back alive. Maria tended to injured engineers, her hands trembling but precise. Every act of care, every gesture of support, every tear shed was part of the human victory. It was not just about ships or weapons, it was about lives, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. The Alien Council's retreat left a silence in the void, a silence heavy with defeat and humiliation. They had underestimated humans at every turn, and now, they would never make that mistake again. But the humans did not celebrate recklessly. They mourned, reflected, and honored the sacrifices made. Victory had been earned through blood, fear, and relentless courage. Dr. Vargas stood alone on the observation deck, looking at Earth shining below. She thought of every life lost, every tear shed, every sleepless night endured. Humanity had survived the impossible, but the weight of survival rested heavily on her shoulders. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "We have survived. We have endured. But the galaxy is vast, and our journey has only begun. We fight for those who cannot, for those who are gone, and for those who will live because we did not give up." The fleet regrouped, engines humming, shields restored, and systems repaired. The humans had survived, yes, but more than that, they had proven themselves. They had taken scraps and turned them into the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. They had faced the mightiest fleets, outsmarted the most advanced technology, and endured the weight of grief, fear, and exhaustion. And in that moment, the humans knew a truth that no alien could ever comprehend. Survival was not about strength alone. It was about heart, determination, ingenuity, and the courage to fight when all hope seemed lost. Humanity had survived the impossible, and they would continue to survive, adapt, and thrive, no matter the enemy, no matter the cost. Dr. Vargas returned to the bridge as the fleet moved in unison, battered but unbroken, ready for whatever came next. The galaxy had seen Earth's might, humanity's ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit that no empire could crush. The stars above were indifferent, but humanity burned brighter than any of them, not with fire, but with courage, hope, and the promise of survival. The humans had survived the alien counterattack. They had triumphed. They had mourned, they had fought, and they had persevered. The galaxy would never forget the moment when a small, blue planet refused to be conquered. And as they prepared for the unknown battles ahead, every human knew one unshakable truth: humanity would endure, humanity would fight, and humanity would never bow. The void of space was quiet, almost eerily so. After the chaos, after the endless battle, the human fleet floated, battered but unbroken. Sparks from destroyed alien vessels shimmered like distant stars, reminders of the destruction wrought and survived. Humanity had endured the impossible. They had faced a galactic empire that believed they were weak, disposable, insignificant, and they had won. Yet the victory was more than physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and unforgettable. Dr. Lena Vargas stood at the command deck, eyes tracing the scattered remains of the alien fleet retreating into the darkness. Relief washed over her, but grief remained, heavy, tangible, impossible to ignore. So many lives had been lost. Young pilots, brave engineers, soldiers who had stood in the line of fire, they had given everything for this moment. She clenched her fists, not in anger, but in remembrance, letting every loss fuel the fire inside her. Humanity had survived, yes, but at a cost that would never be forgotten. Across the fleet, survivors moved cautiously, repairing ships, tending to the wounded, and ensuring that every human soul made it through the night. Pilots hugged each other with tears streaking their faces, engineers sat trembling beside consoles, exhausted beyond belief, and soldiers knelt quietly, whispering prayers for those they could not save. Humanity had proven its strength, but the grief was deep, the pain real, and the emotional scars were as permanent as the stars themselves. Dr. Vargas walked among the crew, her steps steady but her heart heavy. "We have survived," she said, voice calm but thick with emotion. "We have triumphed. We have turned scraps into the deadliest weapon the galaxy has ever seen. We have faced impossible odds, and we are still here. But remember, every life lost, every tear shed, every sleepless night, it carries the weight of victory. Humanity's strength is not in our weapons. It is in our hearts, in our courage, in our refusal to bow." Deep inside the blackened hull, systems long dormant hummed with life. Energy conduits glowed faintly, shadows twisted along the walls in impossible patterns, and the dark matter pulse strengthened. The ship was no longer passive, it was actively influencing the space around it. Alien fleets reported anomalies that grew with each passing second. Gravitational fields warped, space bent, and time itself seemed to falter. Pilots felt minutes stretch into hours. Sensors recorded events that contradicted reality itself. Captain Virek turned to his officers, voice trembling. "We thought victory was ours," he said quietly. "We thought humanity was gone. But this is not a warship. This is a sentinel. Something older than our civilizations, something humanity has left behind to awaken. And now, it moves." Engineers and crew remained silent, fear heavy in the air. Even the bravest among them could feel the dark pulse reaching into their minds, weighing their courage against the infinite patience of the awakened vessel. The first strike was not just a warning, it was a message. The warship, scarred and battered, had become a force that no fleet could challenge. Alien ships that had dominated star systems faltered helplessly. Commanders tried to recall their fleets, but engines failed. Communications were blocked by interference, subtle yet complete. Every attempt to resist only reinforced the warship's control over the sector. Humanity's final creation had become an unstoppable, living force of judgment. In the council chambers, panic reached new heights. Ambassadors argued frantically, some calling for immediate retreat, others demanding desperate countermeasures. "We cannot fight it," whispered one, face pale. "We can only pray it does not notice us. We are not ready for this. We are not equipped to survive this." The chamber fell silent, tension thick and suffocating. Every being felt the same truth. Humanity's last warship had awakened a power beyond comprehension, and it had already begun its first strike of darkness. Historians and scientists studied ancient records feverishly, searching for clues about the ancients, the civilizations that had shaped the galaxy before life as they knew it existed. References described superwarships capable of warping reality, controlling energy, and influencing minds. The last human warship, they realized, was one such vessel, or at least, it carried the remnants of that power. And now, that power was fully active, testing the galaxy with a subtle yet overwhelming strike, demonstrating humanity's mastery over forces long thought lost. Across the void, pilots reported impossible phenomena. Ships flickered into multiple positions at once. Shadows stretched unnaturally. Corridors bent back upon themselves. Engines stalled mid-maneuver. Missiles fizzled. Weapons bent away harmlessly. Even light itself seemed influenced by the pulse. And through it all, the human's warship remained still, its pulse deliberate, intelligent, unstoppable. Captain Virek watched, pale and trembling. "We underestimated humanity," he whispered. "We thought we had won. We thought they were gone. But this is only the beginning. The first strike of darkness has shown us what they have left behind. And I fear, what comes next will destroy us." Around him, his crew shivered. The weight of the awakening, the power of the ancients channeled through humanity's last warship, pressed upon them all. The galaxy had been warned. The first strike had arrived. It was not a battle in the conventional sense. It was an awakening. A display. A judgment. And as the pulse continued to ripple through space, one terrifying truth became clear. The humans had returned not with fleets, not with weapons, but with a force beyond all understanding. The first strike of darkness had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had never known fear like this. Entire fleets that had once dominated star systems now drifted helplessly, engines faltering, weapons failing, sensors scrambling uselessly. The last human warship, blackened and scarred from centuries of battle, pulsed with dark energy older than any living civilization. It had begun its first strike of darkness, and now, its influence spread further, reaching across sectors, bending space, warping reality, and casting long, oppressive shadows across the stars. Captain Virek observed from the bridge of his flagship, eyes wide, heart pounding. "It's everywhere," he whispered. "Every system it touches bends. Every fleet near it falters. Even light itself twists around it. We cannot fight it. We cannot flee it. It is alive in ways we cannot comprehend." Around him, his crew clung to their consoles, trembling, sweat dripping down their foreheads, instruments flickering in and out of function as the pulse spread. The last human warship had become a force, a sentinel of the ancients, and it was asserting its presence across the galaxy. Pilots across the sector reported phenomena beyond imagination. Fleets appeared in multiple locations at once. Engines stalled mid-flight. Missiles twisted away harmlessly. Shadows stretched impossibly along the hull, corridors bent upon themselves, lights flickered in geometries that defied comprehension. The warship was no longer just a ship, it was a presence. An awareness. A force that judged and measured, responding not just to technology but to thought, to strategy, to hesitation. In the council chambers, panic had turned into near hysteria. Ambassadors shouted over one another, claws and tentacles gesturing wildly. "We must retreat," cried one. "We cannot fight this." Another countered, voice trembling, "Retreat will not save us. Every fleet we send is already trapped in its influence. Every weapon we fire fails. This is no longer a warship. This is the power of the ancients, awakened and alive through humanity's last vessel." The chamber fell silent for a heartbeat, and then the debate erupted again, voices cracking, some weeping openly. Across the galaxy, fleets struggled to maintain formation. Pilots whispered to one another, fear heavy in their voices. "It sees us before we see it. It moves before we move. It bends reality around us. We cannot fight it." Engineers frantically recalibrated failing instruments. Communications fell into static. Even the bravest warriors, hardened by decades of interstellar warfare, felt helpless, as if an invisible weight pressed upon them, bending their courage, their focus, and their will. The dark pulse spreading from the last human warship subtly warped space around every fleet, creating zones where navigation systems failed, weapons misfired, and even time seemed to stretch and contract unpredictably. Entire star systems were bathed in this influence. Stars flickered strangely. Gravity fluctuated. Fleets drifted off course, some colliding with debris or asteroid belts. No one could explain why. It was not attack, it was control, judgment, a silent display of the warship's reach and power. Captain Virek turned to his officers, voice trembling. The first strike was only the beginning. Now it is spreading. The shadows, across the stars, it is everywhere. We are caught in its pulse. It is judging the galaxy, testing it. Humanity has returned, not to fight, but to awaken something older, stronger, unstoppable. And we are the witnesses. Around him, his crew could only nod silently, fear and/or etched on every face. Every pulse of dark energy reminded them that no fleet, no civilization, no council could resist what was coming. Deep within the blackened hull of the human warship, systems long dormant activated fully. Energy conduits glowed with dark brilliance. Shadows along the interior shifted in impossible patterns, corridors folding back upon themselves. The pulse intensified, deliberate and rhythmic, stretching invisibly across the void. It was alive. It was aware. It was assessing the galaxy's strength, probing its defenses, and shaping space itself in subtle but unmistakable ways. Historians and scientists on research stations scrambled to understand the scope of what was happening. Ancient records of the ancients described superwarships capable of warping reality, reshaping star systems, and influencing minds across light years. This was exactly what they were witnessing, but magnified, amplified, and now alive. Humanity's last warship had awakened the dormant power of the ancients, and the galaxy had no defense. Pilots reported seeing fleeting glimpses of impossible geometry along the hull. Shadows stretched like claws, light bent in unnatural ways, and space around the vessel rippled like water disturbed by a storm. Ships faltered as if invisible hands gripped them. Communications failed. Navigation instruments blinked out. Missiles fizzled mid-flight. Lasers bent harmlessly away. Every attempt to resist only demonstrated the warship's awareness and intelligence. The council's leaders, watching from their chambers, grew desperate. "We cannot flee," one whispered. "We cannot attack. We cannot communicate. We are trapped in its reach." Another added, voice trembling, "And it is patient. It is not attacking indiscriminately. It is measuring, testing, judging. Humanity left us this legacy. The last warship was never meant to fight alone. It carries the power of something older than all of us, and it is spreading." Captain Virek swallowed hard, gripping the railing as the stars outside flickered strangely under the warship's pulse. "The shadows are across the stars," he whispered. "Every fleet feels it. Every system feels it. It is not just here. It is everywhere it needs to be. And we are helpless." Around him, officers sat silently, the weight of reality pressing down. Humanity had returned, not with an army, not with weapons, but with something far older, far stronger, and far more terrifying. The pulse of the ancients, awakened and spreading across the galaxy like shadows across the stars. And as the dark pulse expanded, bending space, twisting light, and reaching into the minds of every observer, one undeniable truth settled over the galaxy. The humans' last warship was no longer just a relic. It was alive, aware, unstoppable, and casting its judgment across the stars. The shadows had come, and the galaxy trembled under their weight. The galaxy trembled beneath the pulse of the last human warship. Shadows stretched across star systems, fleets faltered, weapons misfired, and light itself seemed to bend unnaturally. Alien leaders realized, with a cold and rising dread, that this was no ordinary ship. This was humanity's final message, their secret legacy, hidden for centuries, now fully awakened. Captain Virek stared at the observation deck, eyes wide, his voice trembling. This is not just a ship, it is a testament. Humanity, they planned for this. They survived centuries of conflict and left behind a force older than all of us, something we cannot fight, something we cannot understand. And now, it has awakened. His crew exchanged silent, fearful glances, each feeling the impossible weight of what they witnessed. Even the bravest pilots and engineers understood the truth. Humanity had left behind a legacy, a force that could decide the fate of the galaxy. Deep within the warship, dark energy pulsed deliberately, as if aware of every mind, every thought, every hesitation in the galaxy. Ancient systems, long dormant beneath layers of human engineering, came alive. Corridors bent impossibly. Shadows stretched and shifted like living fingers. Light twisted. Even space itself rippled subtly under the influence of the warship. It was alive. It was aware. It was the culmination of humanity's foresight, patience, and cunning across centuries of survival. Historians, scientists, and scholars worked frantically across every council station, trying to piece together humanity's secret. They unearthed references to the ancients, civilizations older than recorded history, whose weapons could bend space, reshape star systems, and influence minds. The humans had discovered remnants of that power, hidden it, and ensured it would remain dormant until the moment it was most needed. And now, humanity's final warship had become the key to awakening it. Across the galaxy, fleets watched helplessly. Pilots whispered in disbelief. "It is thinking," one said softly. "It knows where we are. It bends reality to its will. We cannot fight it. We cannot flee it. And yet, it waits." Missiles fizzled mid-flight, engines stalled, and navigation systems failed. Even fleets that had once ruled entire sectors felt paralyzed. Every move made under the warship's influence seemed anticipated, measured, and countered, not by weapons, but by the very pulse of its dark energy. In the council chambers, panic turned into awe. Ambassadors whispered, some trembling. "We have underestimated humanity," said one quietly. "They left us more than a ship. They left us a legacy that cannot be defeated. They prepared for the centuries we thought had erased them. And now, it has awakened." Another added, voice breaking, "They have survived beyond our imagining. They have outlasted civilizations, fleets, empires, and they left behind a force that is older than us all, hidden until it was needed most." The last human warship moved subtly, deliberately, its dark pulse reaching across the void. Fleets reported seeing impossible geometry along the hull, corridors folding into themselves, shadows stretching in unnatural ways. Engines failed. Weapons failed. Pilots felt an invisible presence pressing against them, bending their will, testing their courage, measuring their minds. Humanity's secret was not just technology or firepower, it was a sentient force, a weapon of judgment, an echo of the ancients channeled through their foresight. Captain Virek swallowed hard, his hands gripping the railing. "We have always thought we understood war, fleets, strategy, but we were fools. Humanity's legacy is not just survival. It is wisdom. It is patience. It is a weapon older than our histories, waiting for the right moment. And that moment is now." Around him, his crew remained silent, fear and awe etched on every face. Every pulse of dark energy reminded them that the humans had left a force that could not be resisted, a force that would define the future of the galaxy. The warship's influence spread further, bending light across star systems, warping space around fleets, creating zones of instability that no one could navigate. Communications failed. Navigation instruments collapsed. Ships drifted helplessly. Even the bravest commanders realized they were powerless. Humanity's secret legacy had awakened, and the galaxy was at its mercy, not through attack, not through strategy, but through sheer presence, intelligence, and ancient power. Historians realized that this was exactly what humans had intended. The last warship, scarred from centuries of battle, was a vessel, a key, a guardian of something older, stronger, and more intelligent than any living species. Humans had survived, not merely to fight, but to preserve and awaken a force that would secure their place in the galaxy forever. And now, it had begun its work. Across every fleet, pilots, engineers, and commanders felt the truth settle like a weight on their shoulders. Humanity had returned. Not with fleets, not with empires, not with diplomacy, not with negotiation, but with a secret legacy older than stars, a force of judgment, a power of the ancients, fully awakened through their final warship. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They had celebrated victory too soon. And now, humanity's secret had revealed itself in a way no one could ignore, resist, or survive without awe and fear. Captain Virek whispered to himself, voice barely audible over the hum of the consoles. We have faced humans before. We have fought and won. We have thought them extinct. But this is not humanity as we knew it. This is something they left behind, something alive, something eternal. And the galaxy may never recover from it. The last human warship pulsed again, dark energy radiating across the void, reaching into every corner of the galaxy. Fleets faltered. Pilots whispered. Scientists recorded readings they could not comprehend. And in the shadow of that pulse, the truth became undeniable. Humanity's secret legacy had awakened, and the galaxy was no longer in control. The galaxy quaked under the presence of the last human warship. It pulsed with dark energy, ancient and deliberate, a rhythm older than the stars themselves. Fleets faltered helplessly as shadow and light twisted in impossible patterns across the void. Weapons misfired, engines stalled, and entire sectors fell silent under the weight of the human's secret legacy. Captain Virek watched the phenomenon from the observation deck of his flagship, eyes wide, heart pounding. This is no longer a warship, he whispered. This is judgment. Humanity has returned, not to fight, but to remind the galaxy of its place. Across the council chambers, panic had reached a fevered pitch. Ambassadors shouted, argued, wept. Some called for immediate retreat, others demanded desperate attacks, but every command failed. Every weapon fired bent harmlessly away. Every ship sent to intercept was paralyzed mid-flight. The last human warship had awakened something the galaxy could not fight. It was alive, aware, intelligent, and deliberate. It did not attack indiscriminately. It did not need to. Its presence alone was enough to bend the will of every civilization, to shake the very foundations of the galaxy. Captain Virek's voice trembled as he turned to his officers. The first strike, the shadows across the stars, the pulse itself, it was all a warning. Now, the ultimate reckoning begins. Humanity's last warship is judging us all, testing our fleets, our courage, our intelligence. Every fleet in this sector is at its mercy. Around him, his crew remained silent, the oppressive weight of dark energy pressing against them, a force they could feel in their bones. Fleets across light years reported impossible phenomena. Ships flickered into multiple positions at once. Time stuttered unpredictably. Missiles fizzled. Lasers bent away harmlessly. Even communications became unreliable as whispers of impossibility spread across channels. Pilots whispered in disbelief, It sees our thoughts. It anticipates our actions. We cannot move without it knowing. We cannot fight without it countering. It is everything we feared, and more. Deep within the blackened hull, the systems of the warship hummed with life. Energy conduits glowed faintly, shadows shifted impossibly, and dark matter thrummed deliberately, pulsing in synchrony with an intelligence that had been dormant for centuries. The vessel's pulse stretched invisibly across sectors, bending reality, testing the galaxy, and asserting humanity's return in a way no civilization could resist or ignore. Historians on council stations pieced together fragments of ancient records. The ancients had been civilizations older than any currently known, whose superwarships could bend space, influence minds, and reshape star systems. Humanity had discovered remnants of their power, hidden them carefully, and now channeled them through the last warship. Every flicker of light, every shadow stretching across the hull, every ripple of dark energy was a message, a test, a judgment. The galaxy had thought it had defeated humanity centuries ago. Now, it realized how wrong it had been. Pilots watched in awe and terror as the warship moved with impossible grace, its dark pulse bending the void around it. Engines failed. Weapons malfunctioned. Navigation collapsed. Even fleets that had once ruled entire sectors drifted helplessly under its influence. Captain Virek whispered, almost to himself, "We were blind. We thought the humans were gone. We celebrated their extinction. But they prepared for centuries we didn't even imagine. This is the ultimate reckoning." The council convened again in chaos. Some called for surrender. Some begged for negotiation. Some simply stared in disbelief, realizing that humanity's warship had become a force beyond control, beyond comprehension, beyond resistance. Ambassador Lyra, her voice trembling, whispered to the assembly, "We are witnessing the awakening of humanity's final legacy. This warship, it is not just a vessel. It is a sentinel. It carries the power of civilizations older than all of us. And it is judging the galaxy. Every fleet, every system, every mind, it measures. It weighs. It decides." Across the stars, the pulse grew stronger, stretching farther, bending more reality, warping light, and creating zones of instability that no fleet could navigate. Pilots reported seeing the warship in multiple positions at once, corridors folding upon themselves, shadows reaching like tendrils across the void. Weapons misfired. Communications dropped. Engines stuttered. And all the while, the warship remained silent, deliberate, alive, and fully aware. Captain Virek's voice shook as he spoke to his officers. "We have faced humans before. We have fought and won. We have assumed they were gone. But this is not humanity as we knew it. This is something they left behind. Something alive. Something eternal. And it is passing judgment on all of us." Around him, crew members remained silent, the gravity of the moment pressing down upon them. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the final verdict. Fleets across sectors could do nothing but watch helplessly as the last human warship pulsed, shadows stretching across the stars, dark energy bending reality, and time itself seeming to stutter. Every move, every thought, every hesitation was being measured. Humanity's secret legacy had awakened. Humanity's final creation had returned to assert its presence. And the galaxy, proud, powerful, arrogant, was now at its mercy. The ultimate reckoning had begun. It was not a battle fought with lasers, missiles, or fleets. It was a reckoning of minds, of civilizations, of entire sectors of the galaxy. Humanity had returned, not with armies, but with a force older, stronger, smarter than any living being. The pulse of the last warship spread relentlessly, touching every system, bending every fleet, and leaving no mind untouched. The galaxy could no longer act. It could only wait. And it could only tremble. Captain Virek whispered, voice heavy with despair and awe, This is what humanity left behind. The ultimate reckoning. And I fear, there will be no victory for any of us. Only the shadow of what they were, and the judgment of what they have become." And deep within the void, the last human warship pulsed once more, dark energy radiating across light years, deliberate, alive, unstoppable. The galaxy had been warned. The ultimate reckoning had arrived. The galaxy had fallen silent. Stars flickered strangely in the void, fleets drifted helplessly, and entire sectors trembled under the dark pulse of the last human warship. For centuries, civilizations had believed humanity was extinct, gone, forgotten. And now, humanity had returned, not with empires, not with armies, not with diplomacy, but with a force older than the galaxy itself, alive, aware, and unstoppable. The warship pulsed deliberately, bending space, warping light, and stretching the minds of every being that gazed upon it. Captain Virek stood on the observation deck of his flagship, heart pounding, eyes wide. He whispered, almost to himself, "We thought we understood power. We thought we controlled the galaxy. We were wrong. Humanity has returned, and it is beyond everything we imagined." Around him, his officers clung to consoles, trembling. Even the bravest among them felt the weight of centuries pressing down, the inevitability of judgment undeniable. The last human warship was not just alive, it was justice, foresight, and survival, fused into a single, unstoppable force. Across the galaxy, fleets tried to regroup, to resist, to understand, but every effort failed. Weapons misfired. Engines stalled. Communications died. The pulse of dark energy, deliberate and intelligent, bent reality itself, and even the most advanced civilizations were powerless. Pilots whispered in disbelief, "It anticipates everything. Every move. Every thought. Every hesitation. There is nothing we can do. Nothing at all." Inside the blackened hull, systems long dormant fully awakened. Corridors bent impossibly, shadows stretched unnaturally, and dark matter thrummed with awareness. The warship's pulse spread across light years, measuring, judging, and reshaping the void to its will. The humans had left behind more than a ship, they had left a guardian, a sentinel, a force of destiny that no living being could confront. And now, humanity's triumph was at hand. In council chambers, leaders argued, shouted, and wept, but no solution existed. Every fleet, every station, every strategy had failed. Humanity's secret legacy had awoken, and the galaxy had no choice but to witness it. Ambassador Lyra, her voice trembling, whispered to those around her, This is not war. This is humanity's judgment. They have returned to remind the galaxy what they once were, and what they always will be. We cannot resist it. We can only bear witness." The warship pulsed again, its dark energy reaching every system. Pilots reported impossible visions, corridors folding in on themselves, shadows that seemed alive, light twisting in ways that defied comprehension. Entire fleets became frozen in awe and terror. Ships drifted helplessly. Even the bravest commanders realized the truth. Humanity had returned, not merely to survive, but to triumph, to reclaim their place among the stars, and to awaken powers that no civilization could match. Captain Virek swallowed hard, voice shaking. "We have underestimated humanity for centuries. We thought they were gone. We thought we had won. But this is their legacy, their triumph, their revenge, their justice. They waited. They prepared. And now, they are unstoppable." Around him, officers nodded silently, awe and fear etched into every face. Every pulse of dark energy reminded them of a truth too vast to comprehend. The humans had left something eternal, and it had now awakened fully. Across the galaxy, the pulse reached further, bending space, warping time, and stretching light across unimaginable distances. Fleets that had once ruled entire sectors drifted like leaves in a storm, powerless. Pilots whispered prayers, engineers frantically recalibrated instruments that failed, and scientists recorded readings beyond comprehension. Humanity's triumph was not in destruction, it was in awakening something older, stronger, and more intelligent than any living species. The council fell silent, realizing that the last human warship's presence alone had rewritten the rules of the galaxy. The pulse was deliberate, rhythmic, unstoppable. It was alive, aware, and fully awakened. Every fleet, every system, every civilization had been judged. Humanity's triumph was not just survival, it was mastery over the forces older than stars, a legacy preserved and now fully realized. Captain Virek whispered to himself, voice heavy with awe and despair, "They have returned. Not with fleets, not with diplomacy, not with empires. They have returned with themselves. With foresight. With power. With victory. Humanity's triumph is complete." Around him, the galaxy itself seemed to bow under the presence of the last human warship. Shadows stretched across the stars, light bent, space twisted, and for the first time in millennia, the living universe felt the undeniable certainty of humanity's return. And deep within the void, the last human warship pulsed once more, deliberate, alive, unstoppable. Centuries of planning, survival, and cunning had culminated in this moment. Humanity had not only survived, it had triumphed. The galaxy had been reminded that humans were never ordinary, never weak, and never defeated. Their secret legacy had awakened. Their power had returned. And humanity had won. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer under the pulse. Fleets drifted helplessly. Entire civilizations trembled in awe and fear. And in that silence, in that perfect, terrible, beautiful moment, the galaxy understood the truth. Humanity's triumph was eternal, unstoppable, and fully realized. The last human warship, scarred, blackened, and alive, was not merely a ship. It was the heart, the mind, and the soul of humanity's return. The galaxy had feared them. The galaxy had underestimated them. And now, the galaxy knew the final truth. Humans had returned, they had awakened powers beyond comprehension, and nothing would ever be the same. Humanity's triumph had arrived, and it would echo across the stars for eternity.